Legal experts have noted that Colin Gray's crimes directly linked to his son's actions in a unique way for Georgia courts, and the case is among the first in the nation to seek to hold a parent criminally responsible for allegedly enabling a child's access to a firearm used in a school shooting. We should mention, we know that Colin will not be speaking himself ahead of his sentencing. And we want to start with how this is essentially one of the first cases where they are holding a parent accountable for what their child did. And I want to talk about that with legal analyst Joshua Schiffer, who's joining us now to break down what exactly is going on today with this sentencing. Joshua, thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, so let's start there. So this is a very novel case for Georgia. It's only the second time in our country where a parent is actually being held criminally responsible for an action that their child did. So obviously this is something new, but how does this impact going forward, essentially things that children do and how their parents could face liability?
Part of the benefit of this novelty is that we're going to get guidance from our superior courts here in Georgia, which I expect to go concurrently with the guidance out of Michigan in the only other case of this type that's actually gotten to a conviction and sentenced quite aggressively, because this is going to be kind of the notice to America that with the great right of our Second Amendment to own and possess firearms, there are responsibilities, and the reckless ownership and lack of care when combined with firearms can lead to extensive criminal liability. Due to the novelty of this being the first time in Georgia, Judge Prim has every reason to educate all of the citizenry, as well as the defense community and the prosecution community, on how courts are going to view cases of this nature. Most important to recognize were issues highlighted by some of these victims and witnesses. The idea that Colin Gray didn't bring his son Colt to therapy, so now I have to. That overflow of rights, that impact on the rest of the community due to the failure to act by Colin Gray. That's really what the judge is going to be focusing on, and he understands that this is kind of the last public juncture to have this discussion the court is going to experience. So I expect Judge Prim to make the most of it while also respecting the importance of the process involved, because today is the final healing moment for the community of Apalachee, being that now both will be sentenced.
So, Josh, we know that he faces up to 180 years in prison. We kind of got, I think, a preview of what might we expect today during Tuesday's sentencing hearing for Colt Gray. During that hearing, we heard the judge basically talk about how Colt came from a broken home. I mean, could that be a sign of where the judge is kind of leaning and how he's going to sentence Colin for the actions of his son?
I definitely believe the judge was telegraphing his belief regarding this family and what contributed to Colt Gray being present on that day with the ability to bring a firearm to school and inflict all of this horrible damage. The murders of 4 innocent people tracks directly back to Colin Gray's unwillingness to act in a responsible way when it comes to firearms. Colin Gray, as we saw in the trial and has been talked about during this plea proceeding, was the one who had all of the opportunity, the last and best opportunity, to prevent this tragedy. Not only did Colin Gray fail to secure these firearms and limit his son's ability to commit this crime, it's been established that Colin Gray almost supported the infatuation with firearms, working against the advice of his ex-wife or wife, the Colt's mother, when he was confronted by law enforcement and these issues were brought to his attention. Colin Gray's response wasn't to pull back, lock down, figure out what's going on. He brushed off these signs, these signals that were the rest of the community, waving their arms and screaming, please do something. Your son may be an issue. Your son may have problems. Colin Gray failed everyone, not just his family, by failing to act on those warnings. And I expect Judge Prim to be very stern and specific in how he punishes Colin Gray for that failure to act in protecting the community.
So obviously we know that during today's hearing, the defense went up there and spoke for, I'm just going through the notes from our reporter who's in the courtroom, it looks like for about 20, 25 minutes or so, basically laying out their side of this for the sentencing. During Colt's sentencing, we heard multiple days from the prosecution. Do we expect to hear from the prosecution today, knowing that we are on a break until about 1 o'clock this afternoon when we're hearing that the judge will be coming back? Or at 1 o'clock, could we actually be getting the exact sentence that Colin is going to be facing?
From my watching this morning, I believe this plea is going to, or sentencing rather, is going to follow the more traditional route. And I believe the judge is going to come back at 1 and present sentence and speak for, somewhere between half an hour to an hour, because the state presented their materials. The defense was very clear that they were not going to be offering a lot of testimony, but that they had submitted several writings as well. That the conviction's already done. We don't have the mechanics involved in announcing the conviction. This is simply a sentencing hearing, and there's not that much that either side can add that would reasonably affect the judge's needle moving in one direction or another. The real question is how the court, who has been sitting and thinking about this, is going to structure the multiple charges that Colin Gray has been convicted of. The court has wide discretion in how to arrange those charges, and the manner in which the judge arranges those charges and executes the sentence, that's what Colin Gray's future depends on. If they are run concurrently, there's a much earlier opportunity to potentially leave prison. If they're all run consecutively, I don't think Colin Gray ever walks out of prison again.
Yeah, being 55 years old, there's that chance that if he faces up to 100 years in prison, it could be the rest of his life. We're going to have to wait and see. Josh, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate your expertise breaking this down for us as we await the sentencing of Colin Gray. This is a novel case here in the state of Georgia. So thank you for breaking it down, and thank you for joining us here on Fox 5 News Live.